What's up, everybody? My name is Richard Terrell. I go by Kirby Kid, and you are watching DO Live, a daily stream show in which we talk about game design. We have a Discord. You should join us in our Discord to talk about game design pretty much 24/7. Sometimes I grab a few topics from the Discord and I bring them here to discuss. Sometimes the conversation's a little easier to have when I'm talking out loud and I'm pulling up examples, so that's just something that we do on the regular. So welcome to the show. Today's topic is going to be puzzle games and puzzle design. Questions and topics about puzzles pop up often enough in game design talk. Enough game genres feature puzzles, and there's enough interesting puzzle games that have been popular that everyone should have a basic idea of what they are or have some experience playing one, considering how popular games like Portal and Tetris and Zelda are. Like, people should be familiar. So with that said, Zara in the chat here had a few questions, but he also showed me this Sokoban puzzle, right? So there's a website, apparently, that lets you play Sokoban, and your move high scores are posted on the side, and otherwise, you know, this is just like a really classic style puzzle game, right? So, like, you move a thingy around inside of a grid-based arena. You can only push, you cannot pull, so like I can push these blocks, right? And it's pretty easy to get stuck, which I'll probably do by not thinking too much. So let's see what happens here. And if I push this one more to the left, I'm never going to get it out. As you can see here, like, how can I get it out now? How can I ever get that out of the corner? So that was not the right way to go. And the challenge is to get these 4 blocks onto these 4 white tiles. As you can see, I wonder if I can double push. I don't think that's, yeah, you can't double push blocks. It's not crazy in physics based like that. So, and this has the, it lets me rewind turns, which is cool, and they also keep track of time in the corner, which is pretty cool. I don't know how it's keeping track of time, but I guess it's per tap you do, so that's interesting. And these games are known to be pretty difficult. They're known to be pretty hard. Pretty elegant, because you only need like walls, a circle, some gold tiles, and some block tiles, and then these rules are pretty much preserved as long as you make it to where you can't pull, and as long as you make it to where double blocks don't push each other, you get this kind of difficulty of puzzle. These puzzles, I think, I don't know how hard they are, but they're classified as like, what, MP hard? If I'm making that up, I think that's right. Let me do a quick Google search. But that is just to say that, you know, Sokoban puzzles MP hard, question mark. Or they are P space complete, or something, whatever that means. But yeah, there's a computational way of categorizing the difficulty of problems by how quickly a computer can run through the calculations and solve it. And there's like a whole range of things from like N hard, NP hard, in space, NP complete, and all these other categories that may or may not include each other or may have non-overlapping sections. So, proven to be NP hard. Sokoban can be studied using the theory of computational complexity. The problem of solving Sokoban puzzles has been proven, I'll show you, has been proven to be NP hard. I'll zoom in so you can see it right there. So yeah, I think this just goes to show, I know what a PC is. I think this just goes to show how dynamic space is and how you can do very little to put rules in your game and parameters and elements and whatever, and achieve a very high level of complexity if you know what you're doing. And if not, then you're kind of wasting the magic and power of what space is. Maybe, you know, for some positive effect, but most likely, if you're trying to make your game complex and you're trying to utilize all the cool benefits that space gives you, it's important not to just put in elements that work directly against that goal. So we got Zara in the chat. Yeah, the screen view does move while I move, but I'm not going to be playing this, so it doesn't really matter. And people have a lot of questions about what puzzles are, and I think a lot of people don't realize whether or not they are trying to understand, various gameplay challenges, or whether they're trying to understand the strange and complex history of the way language works and changes over time. And a lot of people like to treat things that are way too literally, right? So they like role-playing game. I'm playing a role, therefore it's a role-playing game. Like, don't be dumb. Okay, that's dumb. Like, that doesn't work with just about everything, because if you just know the history of naming conventions, oftentimes what a word is and how things are named is just an association. So it's not necessary that you can break down every single phrase and word to its underlying parts and then understand it completely. That's just not how it works. So people just name things and names catch on, and all of a sudden, MTV is a music TV network, but it no longer shows music TV videos, and they do reality shows, and things change over time, and people have different expectations, and the world moves on. So it's not as simple as just saying like, okay, role-playing game. It's not as simple as saying, well, I'm in first person and I'm shooting. Like, maybe not. Like Portal. Portal's a puzzle game. It's not a first-person shooter and a puzzle game. It's a puzzle game. It's using first-person perspective, yes. It's using common control schemes and mechanics from first-person shooters, yes, but it's not a first-person shooter. It's a puzzle game. And then beyond that, like, just trying to wrap your brain around what a genre entails and how there could be like really clear core examples, but then the way these things are defined and the freedom in which people can make games that are like a little bit of this and a little bit of that, or half this, half that, or whatever, just shove everything into a big ugly soup. There's going to be fringe examples, and it's going to be more and more difficult to organize these fringe examples, but the point is less to sort of like have these really clear categories. The point is to have categories and communicate in a way that allows people to describe and relate experiences and share ideas and see each other's points of view. So that is ultimately what the purpose of language is, and it's not to make unnecessary strife in the community, unneeded division, or any other kind of divisive means or divisive end. That's just not what it's about. So a lot of people oftentimes try to figure out what a puzzle is by going like, oh, well, I find it puzzling, ha ha ha, therefore it's a puzzle. Yeah, we need something a little bit better than that, because depending on the person, right, and what level of intelligence they have, what level of experience they have, what level of instruction they're given, what level of clarity there is to the system and activity itself, you're going to have people that have a wide spectrum of competency when it comes to solving puzzles, right? And another thing to get out of the habit of is just saying like, oh, it's not a puzzle if it isn't hard, if it doesn't challenge me because I'm so smart, I'm a gamer. Like, don't do that. These puzzles are usually set up for you to apply your mind, not necessarily, you know, surpass the limitations of human cognition, right? That's not what these puzzles are. That's not what they're designed to do. That's not their purpose. So don't go there. Furthermore, you know, applying your mind and these puzzles, we're not testing your genetics. We're not testing your like fingerprint or your eye color and the weird patterns that your eye has. Like this isn't something you're born with. It's a skill, right? Learning like this, applying your mind like this is a skill. So naturally, puzzle is just representing like a fixed challenge, and you can either rise to the occasion and gain the skill it needs to solve a puzzle and even go beyond or whatever, but that has no bearing and no effect on what the puzzle is, how it works, or why it could be a well-designed puzzle or not. So I mean, you could presume that with fast enough computers or cyborg brains or anything like that, like there's a lot of things in life that would puzzle us today that would not puzzle us with that weird cybernetic technological future. So that's just not what our concern is. For the most part, we are trying to create interactive, challenging game experiences that challenge the mind in a particular way or reflect the world in a particular way and focus on just that, like clearly isolating those feelings and those experiences and communicate it. That's what a lot of art does, maybe all art. That's what games do in general. And puzzles are kind of unique in that they focus on knowledge, skills, sort of primarily, right? So it doesn't really, to me, it doesn't really matter. Well, let me just show you the skill breakdown, then we can take it from there. Let's see, where are all my windows? I have so many windows. Here we go. So let's look at my Descartes graph. I've shown this on the stream before, and I can go to designoriented.net right here. You can go to and some helpful links are right here at the top. Here's our Discord link. Here's our Twitch channel, which you're watching right now, so don't worry about it. Here's YouTube, which you're maybe watching right now. Here's Twitter. Here's a topic wheel if you want to just look at the color wheel. Yay, and we're talking about skill here, and we're talking about the 5 ways to break down skill. Knowledge, dexterity, reflex, timing, and adaptation. I call it the Descartes system, as you can see here. And though puzzle games can stress some of these other things, the whole point of puzzle games is to stress these purple thingies over here. Your knowledge, skill, to some degree, your long-term memory. You pretty much need long-term memory to do just about anything. So it's not that we're challenging you to memorize a bunch of stuff, but how you've learned things and what you've learned should always be a factor somewhere in there. Short-term memory, ours short-term memory, our working memory is not too big, so these two things are fairly flexible and fairly standard across different skill sets, I find. Sure, some people remember more stuff or remember different details or remember things differently, but for the most part we all have long-term memory, and it's pretty big, and for the most part we have working memory. We all do, and it's pretty small, so don't worry about that. So the bulk of what we're talking about with puzzle games, we don't really do channels. Most things don't challenge people to simultaneously do multiple things at once or think multiple ways at once, so really that's like, don't worry about that. So really with puzzle games, we're really talking about these 2 skills right here: code and decode, analyze. And these are both types of knowledge skills, or ways of applying your mind. Code and decode is essentially how you chunk the world around you, how you break it into bits or assemble them into groups for easier, stronger formation of memories and stuff like that. And there's a lot of tips and tricks and different ways you could do it, but so that's just like a measure of your skill and your versatility in doing that kind of a thing. But the bulk of what we're going to talk about today is analyze skills, and just like a rabbit hole or Inception or some other cool metaphor, analyze skills also digs pretty deep. So let me just drag this over here and look for Bloom's taxonomy. Yay! These pictures I use often because they are good. Where is... okay. Bloom's. So this is Bloom's taxonomy. Kind of old, been updated a few times over the years, still pretty good. The whole point is you can apply your mind in all these different ways, but these lower levels are pretty much needed to do any of these upper levels. The 3 top levels are pretty much equally challenging and difficult, so you can call this like tier 2. These lower 3 levels are sequential. You got to remember stuff before you understand stuff, before you can apply stuff, and then you're just free to pick one on the top. Just memorizing stuff and recalling facts, right? That's like trivia games and stuff. Those aren't puzzle games. You pretty much have to remember stuff no matter what you do in life in order to competently exert skill in doing those things, right? Especially within the confines of a game, you gotta remember the rules. And pretty much when you are understanding things, classify, describe, discuss, explain, identify, locate, recognize, you know, games give you different level combinations all the time, and you have to identify the parts, recognize like, oh, that's a, let's go back to Sokoban, like, oops, oh, this is a block that can be pushed, and this is an open space, and this is a wall, and this is my character. Like, you gotta do those basic things in order to get by in most video games. So we're really not talking about that as a specialty factor of what we do with puzzles. This is basic human application of knowledge skill. You're pretty much using these all the time. Apply using information in new situations. So you execute things, you implement, you solve, you use, you demonstrate, you interpret, you operate, you schedule, you sketch. Video games should always hit these first 3 levels because they're interactive and because you have to apply, here's the word, all that information on the fly. Like, there's an enemy in front of me, what do I do? There's a power-up over there, what do I do? Let me just go over there, let me figure out how to execute, let me figure out how to implement this information, let me figure out how to solve this problem, puzzle, challenge, whatever. Like, this is video games to a T. When we're talking about games that stress even more knowledge skills, you got to go beyond, right? Strategy games do a lot of the stuff at the top. Puzzle games obviously stretch a lot of the stuff at the top, and while the bottom 3 levels are mostly like just about every activity, just about every video game, just about every skillful challenge, when we get up here, analyze, differentiate, organize, relate, compare, contrast, distinguish, examine, experiment, question, test. You know, when you're labbing stuff for a video game, you got to use a lot of analysis to discover and do trial and error and analyze things. You have to do a little bit of analyze whenever you do trial and error anyway, but we're assuming that you're going to take a more sophisticated approach, a more focused and robust approach by identifying more objects. Where is it? Here. Identifying more objects and then differentiating between them, comparing and contrast, and not just individual elements, but like sequences of elements and how elements can potentially work together and plans of action and all that. You're constantly analyzing that. And this is really, you can spend a lot of time here and not ever have to do create, right? Puzzle games aren't really testing you to be creative. They typically don't give you a lot of options, a lot of variety, a lot of moves, and be like, now figure out your own play style. It's more like, you need to figure out how to get through this, and that's really all there is to do here. So we need to worry about create, evaluate, appraise, argue, defend, judge, select. Like, we don't really need to do that either. Critique, weigh, like when you're talking about a strategy game like StarCraft or chess or something, you're like, well, maybe you want to critique different opening moves or opening gambits, and you weigh the pros and cons and you judge them, and neither are going to win you the game 100% and neither are going to lose the game 100%. So there's a lot of gray area in which you can apply a lot of your intelligence, a lot of your mind, to basically, in a more and more detailed and accurate fashion, evaluate. So when we're talking about puzzles, we're really talking about analyzing. They give you good puzzles, like any good video game challenge, really. If they really want the bulk of the challenge to be here, you applying what you know and using your brain instead of you guessing and checking and not knowing all the rules and not being able to see something coming, then they need to tell you the rules. They need to have clear feedback. They need to show you the challenge. You need to know what's up. Like, that's why people like puzzle games a lot. Like, you look at this and you're like, yep, you see the puzzle? The rest is on you. There's almost no confusion whatsoever about how any of this works. This is it. Solve it. And you find that by increasing the complexity of challenges, by making sure the challenges are sufficiently complex, it greatly reduces your ability to stumble upon the right solution on accident, to guess your way through it. You have to, and then the more complex it gets, the more this whole pyramid structure is stressed, to where, you know, before, if you remember things well and kind of understood it and could okay at applying, you might be able to fudge your way through some analysis just by, you know, you got this far, maybe a little bit further and you can make it. But the more complex it gets, it's going to be even harder to remember everything and harder to understand from there, and harder and harder to apply. So you can see how the increasing complexity of the possibilities, let alone just the other things like the number of rules, gets pretty crazy. So you're looking at Sokoban here. The rules are just like 4 things, just like Enlighten. Like, there's walls, there's goal tiles, there's blocks, and there's just push action, and that's about it. Like 5 rules. Enlighten has 4 rules, right? You got, there's a 5x5 grid of cells, which maybe I can show you. Let's see if I can do this. Hopefully my computer doesn't just crash like crazy. But yeah, by tapping into these really elegant or effective systems and designs, puzzle games try to expose the player and focus their mental application on a very real and tricky and sort of complex or deep part of the universe, right? Almost every game on the planet uses space. I mentioned that before in my article, but there's very few games that don't use any space whatsoever. It's just like 99%, right? Space is so effective at displaying, arranging elements, and reflecting a lot of the interactions that we intuitively understand from an everyday, normal life. So, let me see if I can show you guys this.
Are you streaming?
Yeah. Are you dreaming?
No, I was screen sharing. I'm about to fight the final boss in Splatoon 2.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, jump in the call whenever you want.
Okay. What is this? This. I gotta get my stream thingy up. Add source. Add source. Game cacher. Enlighten. Hey, there it is. This is my game. It's a puzzle game. So like this game is super simple as well. You got your grid here, and you can, it's 5x5. Each of these cells can turn on and off like this, or off, just like you might expect a little grid of light buttons to operate. But the main point of the game is every time you click, it's always in this cross pattern. If you're in the corner, it does those corners and like that, and clicking the same places undoes them, but the patterns can get quite complex once you start losing track of where you were and how you got there. So yeah, just having data, having objects and elements represented in space can really net you some crazy benefits. But some games use it more, some games use it less, and we're just kind of getting started on this like quick and dirty run through a puzzle design. But this is some of the foundational stuff you got to keep in mind. So what was I gonna say? So yeah, so analyzing things. A lot of people think that being smart and applying your mind involves like applying concepts, right? Like everything's so abstract, like everything's in your head, everything's nebulous, it's hard to pin down, it's hard to see your thoughts, it's hard to blah blah blah. So then when people do smart things like solving puzzles or applying their mind, a lot of people just either see the result and like you either did it or you didn't. And that's why a lot of people just seem to utterly lack the language to understand learning, to understand puzzles, and have the ability to talk about many more things that happen from the beginning of the puzzle solving experience to the end. So that's one thing that my game is trying to address, right? It not only gives you this really simple puzzle game, but the puzzle game gets really deep, and it gives you all these interesting ways to get feedback on your cognitive understanding of learning, as well as your mastery of the system. And I have these 5 points that measure your mastery as you go, how much you've memorized, how much your heuristical approach to learning is stressed, how much experience you have with the puzzle overall, your logarithmic methods for solving puzzles, and your cardinal understanding, which is understanding something up, down, left, in and out, and forward and backwards. So like, and then it gives you stats, of course. So that's one of the primary reasons for this game to exist. But the puzzles go everywhere from 1-click puzzles like this, to 2-click puzzles like that, to 3-click puzzles like this, and the connections that are automatically drawn between them are pretty easy to see, because that's something I made so you guys can see it. And you can kind of see the complexity of the more clicks the puzzle takes to solve, like 6, the more branching connections it gets. 7, more and more alternate paths that open up. And 9, more and more different things are touched in the process. And then you get to stuff like this, which is some of the, you get to layer 13 and you're like, whoa, what's happening? So like, yeah, just by slowly ramping up the difficulty, you get so many more connections and possibilities, right? And this is kind of what this is showing you. And to be able to have this relationship in your head, and how some puzzles go from this to that to that to this, or backwards from that to this and this to that, and forwards and in and out, like this reflects a high level of organization to be able to pull this off, to understand it. And this game measures it the whole way through and encourages you and teaches you about learning through the lecture hall, and you can listen to those lectures. Listening to those lectures is much like listening to me now in the stream, so if you haven't played Enlighten, the beta's open, join me in the Discord and we can talk from there. I'm going to go ahead and give you, like that. So back to analyze. Your ability to analyze and differentiate things becomes increasingly complex when there's more and more things to differentiate. That means the more emergent possibilities and states there are, is particularly with the more wrong states there are, you have to do more and more work to sort out the right ones and why the right ones are the right ones. You need to observe, like, what makes this path a better path than this path? Like, what general principle can I extract from this so I can apply this to any other future decision, and so on and so forth. And that requires more and more remembering, understanding, applying, and analyzing. Remembering, understanding, applying, and analyzing. And maybe even a little bit of evaluation when you can't see the end. If you can't know how good one method is versus the other, you need to evaluate it. And that's why the more and more deep, the more complex, or the more emergent states there are to a puzzle game, the more it stresses this pyramid and not just other random things, right? So Zara in the Discord, he brought up this idea, like, he saw my old Pushmo article, which I'll share with you. Why not share? Sharing is caring. CriticalGaming.com. Everyone go there. Blog, archives. There we go. So I write a lot about games. I organize them a lot. I did this one genre study, and then here's a whole segment on puzzles. What's cool is you can see me understanding puzzle design as I go along. These articles are many years old now, but over the years I kept adding to it. And I talked about elegant and brute force solutions. I talked about reading a puzzle and what it means to read something. I talked about just different kinds of puzzles here, right? Like puzzle design, decoder reading is fun. Hey, it's me. And like, what kind of systems do you need in place to develop this ability to read the field? And what does it mean to be able to do that? And what kind of things happen when you read puzzles? And what's the difference between a riddle versus a puzzle? And all these different kinds of ways that your mind is stressed. But Zara was reading my article on Pushmo right here. Pushmo Puzzle Perfection. Pushmo is one of my favorite gaming puzzle series, which I can go by rank by genre and look at puzzles. Where are you, puzzles? There you go. And as you can see, Enlighten's at the top. Suck it, Tetris. Enlighten, Tetris, Latent, Tetris Attack Box by Pushmo, and number 6, above The Witness and Snakebird and Portal and Braid. I really like Pushmo, and one of the reasons I like it is described in this article, but at one particular point in the article, I'm like, look how elegant this game is. You play the same kind of block pushing. I don't even have a screenshot of it here. Wow, you guys don't even, if you don't even know what Pushmo is, that's not going to help you. Let's YouTube it. So this is the original trailer. Let's listen to this. Look at these cautionary warnings. I miss you, 3DS. I love this music, by the way. I love this music.
and you pull these blocks out of this 2D background, and you can only pull them out 3 layers deep, so you got to figure out how to get up to the top and rescue the kid. And sometimes you start at the bottom like this, and you got to pull out like little thingies and build yourself a stair. And it seems pretty straightforward, but you know, as like all good puzzle games, they have a way of increasing in complexity. Not just complexity because it like takes you longer to beat it, but the way you have to apply your mind changes as the difficulty increases, and that's one of the better parts. So like you can even make your own levels, but now you kind of know what Pushmo is. So one of the things I liked about this game was with just a handful of complexities, Pushmo delivers 198 varied puzzle levels for its main game. And I must admit, like with most puzzle games, I was underwhelmed with the game at first. What I seek in puzzle games is a kind of mental exercise that mostly comes from solving challenging puzzles. I was patient with the first 18 levels of tutorials, and the next 53 levels were fairly easy, but after a second set of tutorial, the rest of the design wrinkles were introduced, and you get to do all this cool stuff. Some Pushmo puzzles are complex in that they present large murals filled with mini sections and gadgets to manipulate. So then I actually list, you know, level examples because people kind of forget examples are important. Some are not so large and yet deceptively difficult. These two. Some deceive with near symmetry. These two. Some Pushmo puzzles are deep and they can be read, like that article I just mentioned. Planning ahead and reverse engineering to think functionally to come up with solutions. That's a rough and dirty definition for what it means to read a puzzle. Some puzzles are dynamic, with changing one section will simultaneously change other paths and other options. That's pretty cool. So when you like pull something out, it just cuts off your retreat, and you're like, interesting. Now I can't just reverse my moves and stuff like that. These puzzles can support a kind of double reading. These are some hard ones. Notice S4, S3, S10. This is like post-game stuff, the super levels. That's why these are clearly grouped here. Some puzzles are solved logarithmically or recursively, like the classic Tower of Hanoi puzzle, which I linked to here. But the Tower of Hanoi is a basic puzzle which you can only take off one stack at a time. Before you move another stack, you gotta put it down. So you gotta take all the stacks and arrange them in, you know, fatness order from one peg to the other, and you only have 3 pegs or slots in order to manipulate them. So solving this is like an algorithm. You do this, that, this, this, that, this, that, this. But figuring out that sequence is the challenge of this puzzle. And it's still a great puzzle, even though it's solvable, because that's the point of puzzles, is not to puzzle you infinitely for the rest of your life. And here's the algorithm for solving the 6-this problem, right? Cool. There are puzzles in Pushmo that are like that, and there's also ones that are simple, but they distract the player with extraneous elements, and some that have a folded origami type level design and how players navigate the compressed spaces. So that's like really cool, like so much variety. It's crazy. So that's why I like Pushmo, and I clearly identified some interesting ways that these puzzles challenge the mind. One way is to sort of overload the mind. Like there's jigsaw puzzles I don't like. I've always thought the jigsaw puzzles stress a kind of patience and a kind of low-level activity that you do over and over and over for a long period of time. You can't really like read a jigsaw puzzle. You can't like reverse engineer it. It's just some pieces fit together, most pieces don't. Slowly compare the pieces. There's got to be more techniques to it than that, but I feel like overall jigsaw puzzles are more of a where is it? They stress your ability to classify, maybe describe, or recognize, there it is, the differences between these tiny little bumps and put them together. And it's just a slow and methodical process of doing that. So I don't consider jigsaw puzzles to be deep. So what we're talking about is the broader category of logic puzzles. And what makes you stress more of this pyramid is this idea that you can't just apply the same small, low-level approach and then solve the entire puzzle eventually. You gotta like continually update your models, take in new information, analyze things, and that's how it's that's how you're gonna get the job done. So yeah, most video games are logic puzzles. And go back to the list. Pushmo, yeah.
And then like so there's puzzles like Tetris and stuff, and Tetris has like the time limit because the pieces slowly fall to the ground, and that gets faster and faster. But essentially, Tetris is designed to sort of stress your breaking point and test your ability to work with what you know rather than what you can try to figure out quickly by like moving the pieces around. So I feel like ultimately the speed and the real-time gameplay of Tetris is in service of just keeping your brain honest, keeping the gameplay honest rather than testing real-time skills or anything like that. That's why Tetris still predominantly stresses your knowledge skills, and that's why it's, in my mind, it's still just a puzzle game. Professor Layton is one of the has puzzles in it that are not spatial, so there's word puzzles in the game, and you just have to think about them and then input the answer. Rare among video games. Professor Layton's kind of a rare gem anyway, but the sheer variety of brain twisters and teasers across the 6 Layton games that I played, and the extra puzzles that they put in the Layton series, and then the extra puzzles they put in there, it's staggering, right? So if you love puzzles, that series is one for you. Tetris Attack, much more action style based game, but it has a puzzle mode which I like, which I've talked about in my articles. Box Life is like the most Tetris like game that I've seen. I'll show you. Wow. Have I written about Box Life? I wrote about it here. Okay, you're too zoomed in. Stop. Metaphor meaning matriculation. There's Box Life right there. I wrote about it a little here. I'm sure I wrote about the success. That's funny. Funny concept. This is when I was researching some early phenomena about how we learn and using the graphs built into the game. Which game was this? Yeah, it's Box Life. Ha! Wow. To sort of back up my theory and give me some new hypothesis, and I tested it on Total Biscuit. Stuff like that. It's pretty cool. Box Life is a clean game, so I mentioned it here again when I talked about, feedback in game design. And I talked about it here, finally. In the puzzle design reading failure, this is the extension of the reading article I wrote before, but I talk about this logarithmic solvability and how certain puzzle games are designed with it and some aren't. And Box Life was one of them, and that's why it shares a lot in common with Tetris. And I explained sort of a process of me doing that here and more cool stuff. I'll put the link in the description, but there's a lot to learn with puzzle games. And like all games, right, and like all performing arts like music and stuff, I feel like the difficulty is just so not the point. You're expected to develop the skills to be able to solve it or understand it or play the music, and from there, expressing yourself or understanding it is a whole nother category. So, let's see if there's any other questions in the Discord that I haven't answered. Zara says, I think a lot of puzzles involving movement through space can be defined by logical locks and keys, and I haven't gotten any further than that. I mean, so like sequencing is something that I identify. I saw a YouTube video. Very few YouTube videos actually gave me interesting new ways to think about games and new language. But this one guy did a really excellent series on puzzle design, and he analyzed the game in terms of its ability to create different kinds of logic challenges. And one of the key features is sequencing. So like a game forces you to think more using the blooms by giving you elements that have to be done in a certain order, which means you have to not only understand which order to do it, but how you go about achieving that order. So that's like sequencing upon sequencing. Like if I step here and the floor falls away, that means I won't be able to come back here. So that means then your brain just starts going bing, 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 bing. Just like the enlightened graph I showed you. So sequencing is kind of important. It's a really easy way to get the brain moving and to do some, what is it?
Where's evaluate on this thing? Argue, defend, judge, support, value, differentiate, organize, relate, compare, contrast, distinguish. I think it's more like apply. When you are thinking about the sequence you want to do, you're taking all this information here. You're like, okay, that means I have to, do this or solve it, implement it, operate it in a certain way. So it's still down here, but in order to figure out which sequences to do, you got to use some of this stuff. Cool. Gollum asks, what is a puzzle game you know well that involves movement in space? Almost every single one. Almost every video game on the planet uses space to create its world, convey its information, and give you something to interact with. Frankly, there are a lot of puzzle games about manipulating objects in space. That's what Chariot Rider says, so yes, that's true. Portal, Steven Sausage World, Infinite Factory. Yes, almost everything uses space. Space is too good. Understanding how good it is and being able to use it well, it's the difference between, base level game design understanding and masterful level stuff. I don't think Infinite Factory is the same type of puzzle. People, watch the Mark Brown video. It's like, oh, puzzle solving is a little different from figuring out things in Infinite Factory because blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I don't really care. The way I evaluate puzzle games is this, like how it hits your mind, how the information is fed to you, and the structure of the challenge itself, and then all the other stuff is just different flavors of getting you to use your brain like this. Like that's all it is. I don't really care if there's multiple ways to do it. Some puzzles have multiple ways, and if you think a puzzle with 2 solutions, like a brute force, well, let's just show you the article. Brute force and elegant solutions. But if you think that puzzle is certainly acceptable, then why not thousands? Like, what's the freaking difference? You gotta kind of actually understand what the core experience is, what the core design thrust is for a puzzle, for you to weed through examples like that and sort them appropriately. So let's just look at brute. So I was thinking about elegant solutions recently. Elegant solutions are a wonderful part of difficulty design and game challenges. It's common to many of us, and therefore it deserves some clarification. Let's look at definition. So I started with the definition. Oh no, my YouTube video. Doesn't matter. So just using language first to say what is elegant, what does it mean for something to be efficient, effective, easy, and then defining elegant solution better, going through a lot of game examples, going through more game examples. Like, this is the kind of thorough stuff you need. And then I made this video in a follow-up article. But this video, hey, good old-fashioned, my old game design channel.
Today we'll be looking at elegant solutions. This first game is called Use Boxman, and this is a level late in the game where normally you would have platforms to walk on, but now they're all invisible. So clearly the brute force solution is to just keep running along, making mistakes.
And you can watch that on your own time. Okay, so back to the topic here. Infinite Factory is more like Sudoku, Picross, crossword puzzle. Infinite Factory is more like Sudoku. I wouldn't say that at all. Picross, no. Picross is only one possible configuration. Sudoku, there's only one. Infinite Factory is many, so I wouldn't say it's more like those. Yeah. So there's a lot of Sokoban-like puzzle games too that take moving through space and pushing things. A great example would be, where is it? Puzzle. A Good Snowman is Hard to Build by Alan Hazelden. Great game there. 12 on my list. Mario vs. Donkey Kong is a bit more of a action-y game, but I don't care because I put it here because I wanted to. Airport is also more of an action-y game, but it's got this really cool sort of sequencing focus that gives it enough of a puzzle-like stress, even though it's all in real time and it gets kind of crazy. Like, too bad. I put it on my list. You can deal with it. Just as you have an infinite supply of alphabets in the crossword, you have an infinite supply of block types in the Infinite Factory. The main difference are the Infinite Factory is 3D. That's a weird way of thinking about how those games create their challenges and what kinds of mental things they stress. So, what about the systemic nature of games? Sure, the player-controlled aspect is about placing objects in space, but in order to guide that process, you need to consider how objects will move through the system. Even if you don't directly control those blocks, couldn't you say that you're still slightly manipulating them anyway? I'm not even sure what that question's asking. The move count isn't as important as the number of times the player has to change course. The solution is full of loops and backtracks. I think he's talking about the Sudoku puzzle. You listen to the stream. Twitch.tv. Oh, okay. Okay, I thought you might use the Twitch chat to communicate. But Zachtronic games seem to be the create part of Bloom's taxonomy. Does that make them not puzzle games? So let's take a look at that. Create is design, assemble, construct, conjecture, develop, formulate, author, investigate. That's kind of interesting. You don't really investigate things in... Let's hope I'm not like falling out of my chair. Let me see what this looks like. That's good enough. I'll just do this. You don't really investigate things when you play these games. I'm sure there's always a bit of discovery and you're learning, so that's always going to be there a little bit. But to me, investigating truly is like labbing something out in Smash Brothers. You're like, I need to create an entire understanding of how this character may work in combo and work in all these different contexts. So, like, you don't author anything. I mean, not to any significant extent to which you're not doing that in every other video game that's non-linear and gives you even just a little bit of control. Like, everyone has their own playstyle when they play Smash. They create themselves. And the fact that you create a different result to get to the solution in Infinifactory or SpaceChem, to me, is very similar to using a different approach to solving a puzzle that has less possibility space, a smaller possibility space. Like, your sort of heuristical methods and logarithmic solving methods, those are things you create too, and you have just as much sort of creativity and authorship in how you shape your mind and how you shape your thoughts, perhaps, as you do with just how you create your structures in Infinifactory. I'm talking about Infinifactory a lot, so let me show you what it is in case you don't know. Trailer, please. Trailers are really good at showing you what's up really fast. So dramatic. But you build all those blocks, you put them in place, and you try to get your sequence of things to build very specific combinations of blocks and stuff, and you have access to a ton of the blocks to put however you want, but then you're also sort of rated on your efficiency and things like that. That's an Infinifactory, so let's see. So again, like, I don't know why you think putting a block into a place to get something to happen in the way that the level is asking for is any different from, like, going into Sokoban here and pushing blocks into place to get the game to move or be in a way based on what the level is asking. Like, what's the difference? right? Like this is both of these are like this one's a sequence of moving a person through space, but that one you create conveyor belts to move your stuff through space. But ultimately, like it's the same. You're figuring it out. You're creating it. There's elegant ways to do this game, this puzzle right here, and there's inelegant ways. Just like with Infinite Factory, people are posting their moves on the side of how efficient they are. People posted there and got leaderboards for Infinite Factory. Like, what's the difference? The Infinite Factory criteria is very strict, but they want a block that looks like this, and has stamps on it. So you got to make a block that looks like this, and has stamps on it. Just like this is asking for a very specific shape to put the blocks in to finish. Just like Space Kim, which is the same person who made Infinite Factory. It's a 2D version-ish. So yeah, like I feel like when people talk about games, they try to make all these weird exceptions, and they aren't really thinking about the core of the definitions, the core of the kind of experience they're even thinking about, and then they just keep trying to haphazardly sort things into different categories. Like just all the games look different, all of them sound different. That's like saying, is Pushmo still a puzzle game because you control like a little sumo dude with red pants? You're like, what does that have to do with solving puzzles? You're still playing a puzzle game. The thing that you're doing by controlling that dude is still manipulating blocks and finding the sequence and blah blah blah. Like sometimes the flavor of it shouldn't matter and shouldn't distract you at least. That's typically my response to that. So Chariot Rider said, have I played Fidel and Dungeon Rescue? Let's see. Show me potato salad puzzle. There it is. Roguelikes and the like. And the like. So Spelunky is my favorite roguelike and the like. Then Fidel is my second favorite roguelike and the likes. Downwell, fantastic. It's more of an action game, less like a roguelike, like. So I put it in third, even though whatever. Like I just thought it fit. And then Sharon's, is great too. Obviously, I like platformers and I like shoot 'em. But Fidel's. I guess I'll show you Fidel too. Can't just mention a game. Fidel Dungeon. I call it Papa Rescue. I need a trailer. Yeah, so this game, the creator came out with the game. I saw him working on it for a long time on his stream, and it finally came out. I'm like, oh, this game looks cool. I really enjoyed it. It's great. And then he kept adding content to it, like so many developers / not just indies, but like everyone. There was a time when people were like, oh, people keep making sequels. They just keep making the same games. I don't think they realize that people don't have a whole bunch of games inside of them. And oftentimes when they put so much work getting one thing to exist out of nothing, they often have trained themselves to think only in that mode. And it's so easy for them to add little bits of tweaks and stuff. But I didn't really like Shovel Knight's like additional content. I haven't played Fidel's additional content. I just like their main core stuff. And this is it. Every room's kind of semi-randomly shuffled. And you don't know what kind of room you're going to get to next. You start with a little chord, and you can't cross over your own chord, so that already has a bit of sequencing in it. Enemies have dynamic relationships and other kind of chain effects that you have to, again, determine your sequencing. And that's why this is a puzzle crawler. Sure, it still has roguelike like elements, including leveling up and getting your health back when you level up, which is such a strange system, by the way. I was thinking about that the other day. We'll have to talk about that some other time, but that's Fidel. And yes, I played it. And yes, I like it. So, I mean, I promised you guys some, where's my game? Is it not picking up my refresh, please? I have, let's see. Remove, please. Add source. Game capture. Sausage. There we go. So now we're looking at some Steven sausage here. Steven sausage roll. Oh, Goku, you're a wild man. There we go. And we'll turn the sound effects back up. So then people talk about Steven Sausage Roll all the time. They're like, such a great puzzle game. This game's so good. And I'm like, okay. I heard so many great things about it. And I start playing this game. And it does so many just weird things. I've only gotten 55 sausages. Have no idea how big the game is. Ooh, I like Rumble. Ooh, give me this. So, like, I kind of like how the levels are reboot style, just like dropped and carved out of the sort of overworld that you're traveling along in. I like the sort of asymmetry of movement where you can like back up and then rotate this, and there's all these other kind of neat little nuances. It's a very Sokoban-like game, right? So like, oops. See, I gotta go backwards. Order and sequencing matters even with your movement more so than other games. And it took me forever to figure out how to go upstairs because this game's obtuse and they didn't tell me how to play it. Annoying. Stupid indie, not telling basic instructions, think it's funny, like whatever. I don't think your game's that good, but that's alright. I liked English Country 2 much better. Let's look at my list again. Where is my puzzle list? I'll look at it. It's not even, I didn't even put it on my list. There it is. English Country Tune, 21. It's my 21st favorite puzzle game. Just under Starseed Pilgrim and just above Picross 2D, which is just above Picross 3D. Yeah, so sometimes I feel like why do other people even play these games and like them in general? Like, what I like about this game is some of the challenges were so elegant and they seem really difficult, but that's because the game has like no ordering, right? Typically video games scaffold you and give you difficult challenges later in the game and give you easier ones that outline concepts or give you the best chances of discovering these concepts and remembering them early on. And then it's kind of up to you after that point to freaking make it work, right? But this game, because you can go to so many parts of your island early on and you play hard ones first and kind of not know the order and kind of not even know what the basic progression of rules are at the very beginning, like, what good is that? I don't value that. I'm just like, okay, so if you want me to like take a course on like what, Calculus 2 or something, and you just have me like flip open the book randomly and try some problems and be like, oh, I didn't even know I should have done chapter 1 before doing chapter 7. Like, psh, no value. And like, I take teaching and communicating pretty seriously, so just doing pointless things like that, I just have to question, like, why am I even here and why are you doing this? So like, again, it's the point of this game for me to learn things out of order, which ultimately, because I don't have enough information, just like not knowing the rules and not knowing stuff, is like, is that the point, or is the point for me to know the rules and still be stumped and then apply my mind and get unstumped? Because one way does not give me that. I'll let you be the judge on which one. So this is where I left off. You know, the game was getting kind of old. And these challenges are very challenging, right? Very elegant, very Sokoban-like, which is what Sokoban games do. This game added some new wrinkles with the character having such weird movement. Like right here, I got to get a sausage there to get over to that other side. So I'm like, oh, where am I going to get a sausage? Oops. Ah! Yeah. So I'm supposed to take this sausage right here that I earned and get it over there to get across the bridge. I guess I've done all these puzzles, right? So I'm not a complete slouch. I don't know how many there are total, but I've already done that one over in the top right that you see was a crazy puzzle, right? That one up there, or did I do that one up there? How did I even get up there? I guess I haven't. But yeah, any other questions, peeps, about puzzle design and puzzles? Yeah, I feel like some people think puzzles is like writing high school poetry. Like I gotta make it hard because and make it sound like it's all fancy because that's what good things are, right? And you're just completely misunderstanding all that classic poetry you read. They didn't sound fancy to themselves. That's how people talked, especially with the expectations of writing. That's normal. Like you don't need to sound like them. You don't talk like that. You don't think like that. So don't do it. Likewise. What am I doing? What does this say? There were once a great people here, but now there's something even greater. Turning people into sausages? I don't know the trick. I don't know the, I don't even know how to reset this, so maybe... I can't get that unless I... And I would have to take it over here, right? And like I couldn't rotate it over here and walk it into place. So unless I had it right here and I walked it backwards, but then I couldn't get it off my fork. That's a tiny little corridor. I feel like I pushed it. There we go. I like that you can play this game in one hand, so I can stroke my fake beard. And then in order to get it off, you gotta like wedge it, right? So like... And you can't rotate once you have the sausage in grip. So that's another little wrinkle. How do they make elaborate step-by-step puzzles in Zelda? How? So, what are some of the most elaborate puzzles in Zelda? I think Twilight Princess has some of the most elaborate puzzles. But they're elaborate... Their elegance and elaborateness don't necessarily translate into difficulty, but the fact that they can create these different challenges like this, I think is just next level, right? So like the Snow Peak Ruins in Twilight Princess, I think they had... So like, I think the... like a running challenge for Zelda developers was, you remember those old block push puzzles we had in the original Zelda? They're like, yeah, those really weren't puzzles. You just have to find one side of the block that's weak and push it to reveal a secret. Like, how about we up the ante? So they made Link to the Past. You're like, now it's a puzzle. You got to figure out of all the movable blocks here, what sequence do you press in order to let you go through? Otherwise, you block yourself. Cool, we made a really, really, really simple block push puzzle. Everyone give it up. Next Zelda game, like, you know those block push puzzles that we did in Link to the Past? And this next game's obviously Ocarina of Time, so like, how do we do that in 3D? Like, interesting. Well, now that you can climb on blocks, maybe blah blah blah. So then they did a few block pushing puzzles in Link to the Past, and then in Majora's Mask, like, how do we up the ante again? Like, interesting. Wind Waker didn't have so much of this, but then in Twilight Princess, like, well, people kind of expect block pushing puzzles, even though there's not too many of them in Zelda. You're like, well, how can we up it again? Like, how about we make the sliding ice floor with crates that held the house's supplies, and then we'll layer the challenge to where you go to the first time, it's this kind of block pushing puzzle. You go the second time, you can melt the ice, and it becomes this kind of block pushing puzzle, which is even harder. You go the third time, I think there's a third time, you can look at it from above and really get like a bird's eye view and blah blah blah. Like, that's a really cool thing to do in your game. Make the puzzle out of the same organically evolving space, and then keep upping the difficulty or complexity or whatever. So that's an example of what I'd imagine the thought process was for the Zelda team. They're like, hey, block puzzles in themselves are just a type of thing, right? So like, how do we either make it more organic or more integrated or more interesting? And from there, you get a lot of your stuff. The puzzles that I outlined in... Why are you a jerk? I gotta figure out how to get this off. There we go. The puzzles I outlined in Enlightened were things I discovered and thought were interesting, but that system kind of makes its own challenge because it's just like clicks and clicks and clicks and clicks. Not really about conceptual things, but just the fact that every click you add increases the complexity of figuring out how to solve it. How did I get that one there? And then I could do that and then walk backwards out of it if it's only on the other end. I don't need your answers, but thanks for the help. Bleach was trying to give me answers before for Snakebird, or was that Adrian? Was it Bleach and Adrian? And I was like, shut your mouths. Now I'm in this area, sausage roll. Yay, puzzles. I like how like the meat that you're gonna encounter in the challenges are these blocks right here, these blocks. And you can see right here, like, oops. Oh, escarpment. That's the freaking... Escarpment is like the little gear exchange system that's in clocks that allows them to tick. Let me see if I got that right. A long, steep slope, especially at one edge of the plateau or separating areas of a land, different heights. Am I thinking of escapement? Escarpment clock? Piece? Escapement. I learned a new word. Escarpment. Pronounce...
Escarpment.
Yep. New word. Fun. And you gotta cook the meat. Oh, I almost didn't see that. Yeah, this is kind of what I meant by the reboot. Oh, this one looks like it's fancy pants, which I don't want to do. Cool. So a lot of basic puzzles that aren't really puzzles. They're like one-step problems or two-step problems, which really require very little brain power anyway. Like you can trial and error and guess your way through it. A lot of people get bent out of shape about that. You're like, they're actually building some concepts so you can know what the heck's going on later. You angry Zelda fans or non-fans, I don't really care. But yeah, like as far as, so like if you like the organic integratedness of this sort of like, look, you're traversing over the Steven Sausage Roll world and the levels kind of drop out from where you're standing like this, like that, then that's just another cool way to evaluate and appreciate puzzles, and it's one that Zelda does better than all the other people on the face of the planet. Not only do they have lots of different games and 2D top-down and side-scrolling elements and 3D elements and open world elements, but they found ways to have all kinds of different puzzles. Look, I knocked the sausage onto the floor. You can get trapped in this so easily. Like I just did. Cool. Well, that's a cool peekity peek at puzzle games and understanding what they're made out of. I wish I could play a little bit of Breath of the Wild and show you some shrines. I don't have the game on me. What else do I wish I could show you? Cool Twilight Princess puzzles. Yeah, I mean, there's the elegant and brute force solution things that we kind of went over, but there's so many more things you can do with puzzles, puzzle design, just like level design, because really puzzle levels are very similar to any game's level, right? You don't have to put them in two weird categories where you think one is solvable and the others aren't. Like, psh, get over it. Like, just talk about what they stress, talk about how they convey their information. Don't worry about those non-useful categories for people who don't play the game or like the game genre in the first place. But that's it. That's all I gotta say. That's the end of our stream, and I don't feel like playing Sausage Roller, dude. The game is neat, but not nearly as mind-blowing as so many people keep saying. Like, it's a Sudoku-style game with some weird controls. Like, okay. Okay. And I'll see you guys next time. And as soon as I figure out how to stop the stream.